Hello, and welcome to Will's Infinite Library. I'm Will, and this is my Infinite Library. As always, thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to talk to you today about a book that's near and dear to my heart. Anyway, the topic for today, my favorite book of all time. So this is kind of hard to talk about for a couple reasons. One, because I think our favorite things are often things that we keep close to us, and there's a little fear of sharing it for being judged about your own opinions or that other people just won't like it as much. I think for those reasons, I'm often hesitant to say my favorite book of all times. I'm very indecisive about a lot of things, and having favorites of anything, I'm very indecisive about as well. I'll waffle back and forth on different things, my favorite food or my favorite music or whatever, but my favorite book of all times, I am not indecisive about, and that is Jitterbug Perfume by Tom Robbins. You can see this is a very well-loved copy. I've had a couple copies of the book over the years. This one's a hardcover. I don't know if it was an original printing, but it's certainly like the original design, which I really like, and it feels really nice to have a hardcover copy. I want to kind of quickly tell you a little bit about my history discovering Tom Robbins books, and specifically this one. When I was in high school, I discovered Tom Robbins. My friend was actually reading Jitterbug Perfume for school and mentioned it to me, and I kind of added it to the back of my mind in a mental TBR list that it was something I would check out one day because it sounded interesting. And I ended up actually picking up a copy of Fierce Invalids Home from Hot Climates instead of Jitterbug Perfume because it was the latest book. And honestly, I'm not really sure why I started with that one, but I did. Maybe just because it was the latest one. I instantly fell in love with how it combined so many things. Like, it was meaningful, but it was still playful. It didn't take itself too seriously, and that's a common theme through all of Tom Robbins' books, and one that I love because it's a good reminder for me. And these books kind of focus on the mysteries of life and make the world feel magical and like somewhere you want to live, somewhere you want to be excited to live. And all of those things just really spoke to me at the time. And I just felt myself totally immersed in this kind of almost philosophy more than anything. Like, it's not really like a kind of world building or something, because most of these books take place in reality, in our present reality. But something about it is just like a magicalized version of our world where everything is exciting, everything is worth poking, both poking fun at and poking to find out more about it. And I love that combination. I think this curiosity about the world and this need to feel excitement. And over the years, that's what I've loved about Tom Robbins books, is they make me see the world differently, and they make the world feel different to me. They make me feel really excited about life and excited about ideas, and they make me kind of laugh at myself and for taking things too seriously while they helping me take things more seriously. And it's just this amazing kind of balance. If you read the books, you know what I'm talking about. If not, I'm sorry, I can't say it better. It sounds crazy. It is crazy. That's why I love it. And so I've read through all of his books over the years, been a big fan. And so, yeah, all of these books have touched me in some way, a few of them more than others. In Jitterbug Perfume, I place at the top of that list, and I think there are a couple reasons. One is that the plot is tighter, I feel like, than some of the other ones. But the main reason is because it's kind of like this ultimate kind of romantic dream, this ultimate romantic plot that captures our mind of what we want a book to be, where we want a book to take us, and like what is the capability of humanity, of a human, and what can we do with no limits, which is really exciting. Jitterbug Perfume is about two characters who are condemned by their society. So there's Alabar, who is a king in like Middle Ages Europe, and in his culture, when a king shows signs of old age, he is put to death because he's seen as no longer a fit leader. So Alabar gets a gray hair. He realizes that he's going to be put to death, and he's part of this very kind of like paganistic culture where it's more about society, not the individual. Individualism doesn't exist yet, so he doesn't think of himself as a self really, or as it. There's no reason for him to think I'm worth saving, I'm worth living, because this is how his culture works, and if that's good for his culture, then that's what he should do. But this idea creeps into his mind, like, what if I didn't have to die? So he escapes, long story short, and sets off on his own. On his journey, he comes across Kudra, who is in a similar situation. She lives in a culture where when a man dies, his wife is burned along with all of his possessions, which is ridiculous as well. And she also gets it in her head that, what if this didn't have to happen? What if I could escape death? So she ends up meeting Alabar, they run away, and they keep escaping death. And that's really the story, is them escaping death, running from death, deciding that they don't want to die because they don't. And that death is kind of this reluctance to accept life in a way. And this kind of big romantic idea really captures, I feel like, everything that I want out of a book, or what literature is capable of, or what these big romantic ideas are capable of showing us. Or it's just kind of the ultimate thought experiment, pushing this idea of what is a human capable of to the furthest limits. And I find that really exciting. And it's one of those ideas that's like, how did this not exist before? How was this not a retelling of a ancient myth or something? And maybe it is in some ways, because it does have this kind of fable-like quality as well. And then there's just so much cool stuff in the book, so many brilliant ideas, a lot of interesting things about religion, and kind of looking at Christianity and its real roots, and how it kind of, the trajectory of religion throughout history. And this view of religion is really interesting too, because it kind of takes you through this trajectory of the idea of self, individuality, and people's perception of death and what it means as individuality became a concept that people took note of and tried to live their lives around. So it takes you kind of on this journey throughout how people developed alongside religion, or how religion developed alongside people. And it's just really fascinating, because it takes you from ancient times when people were really close to the earth. They didn't fear death because it was a natural cycle of life. They saw a seed planted in the ground. There's an actual passage that kind of describes this, like a seed planted in the ground grows, and like then you plant a body in the ground after you die, and new life grows out of that from the soil being enriched. And this idea of being really close to life and death both, and not really separating them and seeing it as a pattern. And then over time, as individuality came about and gained traction in the world, people started to fear death, because they saw, oh no, if I die, everything's over. Whereas before, they saw their death as part of a cycle, part of a larger kind of web of life in a way. So I think that's really cool. And then it takes it through religion, giving people reasons not to fear death or to think about it differently. And it really interestingly paints Christianity in a realistic way, I think, where it kind of exposes some things about it and how it kind of warped pagan ideas and was used to kind of explain away things, or how like pagan traditions were twisted into Christian religions to teach people about them and to build Christianity up. But it also is very kind of understanding of what is good about Christianity, what makes it work, what did prophets really want to get across, what were the pure good parts of their message that we can learn from throughout history and what we can learn from today. And I really like that refreshing perspective of not just accepting religion, but also not simply turning it away either, and realizing that there are things to learn. And that's really cool. And I think kind of emblematic of this whole philosophy throughout Tom Robbins' books of being curious about the world, wanting to learn more, wanting to understand deeper why things are the way they are, but also not dismissing anything. And and coming at things with a curiosity and a sense of humor, both of which I think are extremely important. And there's this word that comes up throughout the book that is described, I think, as a dead word in a dead language and is unpronounceable. So good luck me trying to say it, but the word is Erleichda. I'll write it below. And the word essentially is untranslatable, it says, but it basically means lighten up. And there's this idea that lighten up is something when your body gets lighter, your mind gets lighter, the light bulb goes on. There's all these different kind of ideas to it, but it's a perfect way of summing up kind of Tom Robbins' philosophy of reaching kind of enlightenment in a way of also lightening up, like taking the world less seriously and kind of finding meaning through playing with the world, which is just a fun way of looking at things, kind of a magical way that makes, again, things exciting because it makes things look new and different. And I just can't say enough good things about this because it just, all of his books strike me in this way, make the world kind of light up for me. And this one is kind of, I feel like the center of all of that, the center of that philosophy, the center of all of those ideas coming together in the most kind of poetic and the most maybe approachable way too. Because the other ones, a lot of his other books feel more experimental, I guess, is the thing. And this one feels a lot tighter. So it's kind of the payoff of all that experimentation, I think. And I love it. I love that it happened. And I love all of the books for different reasons. But this one, I think everything really comes together. And it's so good. And if you haven't read it, please read it. And if you have read it, you know what I mean. The last point I wanted to make about this book is that if nothing else about it excites you, it does have a section that is an instructional guide for how to live forever. So you might want to look that up. So yeah, just I feel like death is kind of the thing in life that makes life exciting and makes us realize our time is precious. But it's also the thing that hangs over all of us and we all have to deal with, whether it's through religion, through coming up with our own worldviews or some other means, whether it's turning to substances and self-medicating, whether it's, your family, whether it's your community, your church, if you're religious. We all have ways that we deal with death and death around us, the potential for death, and our own mortality. The ideas in this book just really get at the center of, I think, the human struggle, what it means to be alive, where we come from, where we're going. And for all of those reasons, to me, it's just the perfect book in so many ways. So for me personally, I'm going to emphasize, yes, to me, it is the perfect book. It is my favorite book of all time. And it always will be, maybe. It has been for decades. And I've reread it probably 5 or so times. And then one of the last times I went through and underlined passages throughout the book that were really meaningful to me and kind of highlighted the trajectory of the ideas in the book of the evolution of religion, of individualism, and then Alabar and Kudra's journey to run away from death. And as they run away from death, they inevitably become immortal, which is just cool. It's the ultimate kind of mind over matter, I guess, of your view shaping the world and not limiting you. And then I just wanted to share with you a drawing I did because I loved the book so much. I've had the idea to get a tattoo since I was a teenager and just never thought of the right one. And I started designing one I wanted based on this book. And I drew it on the inside of the book. And it doesn't look very good. It's a concept kind of art. I would get a real artist to do it if I ever get the tattoo. But I will just share it with you here. And that is the word that I cannot say. Erleichda. In my head, it sounds like Erleichda. So that is Jitterbug Perfume. That is my favorite book of all time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this video. If you've read Jitterbug Perfume, if you haven't, if this makes you curious to check it out. And I would, of course, love to hear what your favorite book of all time is. And I know not everyone probably has one, because it's so hard to have a favorite anything, isn't it? Like it's so hard just to have a thing that you connect with on such a deep level that nothing else compares. And I think that's why I said earlier, I'm so indecisive about these things and having a favorite anything, because usually it changes based on what else you read. Like maybe your favorite will change and keep refreshing as you read a new favorite. But for me, this book just consistently, every time I read it, blows me away. It always stays in my mind in a way that nothing else does. And I feel like it's kind of become a part of me over the years, and definitely a part of my worldview and my philosophy. So yeah, that is Jitterbug Perfume. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble on and on about it and try to pronounce the unpronounceable word. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. And of course, let me know what your favorite book of all time is, whether it's Jitterbug Perfume or whatever it may be. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.